Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Oner First Thoughts. This is the portion of our show that is spoiler-free, where we just give our first impressions of a film. This week we are, of course, talking about the biggest film in the world, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, starring everyone in Hollywood but Timothée Chalamet, it seems. If you watched last week's episode on Troy, I think Troy is a good companion piece to this movie. I think it acts as a good prequel. Kramer and I both have mixed feelings about that film, about Troy. There's some elements to Wolfgang Petersen's Troy that are really, truly breathtaking and still hold up. There's some filmmaking and craft that's really fantastic in that movie. But overall, it's a screenplay that kind of falls flat, and the characters just don't really feel very well realized and well developed, and it's uneven to the point where by the end of the film it's a little unremarkable. That is not how I feel at all about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, which narratively is sort of all of the events that happen after the events that take place at the end of the Iliad, which is what Troy is loosely based around. This is Homer's The Odyssey, interpreted by Christopher Nolan. There are a lot of artistic freedoms taken here in this adaptation, as is the case with most film adaptations of things like this. I absolutely love this movie. If this is not a masterpiece, I don't know what is. I gave it 5 stars on my Letterboxd. I very rarely hand out 5-star reviews over there. I can't say enough good things about this movie, about the acting, about the score, about the scope of it, the cinematography, the production design, the costume design, the way they went about making this movie. I can't wait to get into detail about all of my thoughts and about it and why I loved it so much when I do the longer conversation with Kramer. But my general thoughts here are just that it's very, very good. I want to spend a little bit of time here, though, just in the first thoughts to talk about the way that this movie is being talked about online, because it's very strange. There's so many different elements to how this is being talked about. If you look at the aggregators online, if you look at Letterboxd, if you look at the audience score and the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, it looks like this movie is universally being loved by pretty much everyone who sees it. But if you look at online comment sections of any post talking about this movie, it's much more mixed. And a lot of that is like, it feels like controlled opposition in a way. I don't want to be too conspiracy tinfoil hatty about it, but like, there was so much hate for this film before it ever even came out. So many people wanting it to fail because of casting choices, like casting Elliot Page and casting Lupita Nyong'o. There were a lot of people saying that Elliot Page was cast as Achilles. He is not Achilles in this film. That's the one, I guess, spoiler that I'll include in this. But like, like the fact that no one was willing to give the movie a shot on its own merits and they wanted to write it off immediately because of identity politics and the overt, blatant racism of the way people dealt with the casting of Lupita Nyong'o. If I see one more out of context screenshot of Lupita Nyong'o screaming as Helen in this film, and not even Helen's twin sister, I swear it's so frustrating because they're acting like those are the only images of her in the film, is her at her most emotional, her in the middle of screaming in rage at her husband, and there's no other images. That they couldn't possibly have found a screenshot of her looking gorgeous in like one of her gowns, and she does look gorgeous in several shots of this film because Lupita Nyong'o is a very gorgeous person. But just the overt racism, the overt transphobia, it makes it hard to talk about this movie online. And then on top of that, there's just this thing with film criticism where people just want to feel unique, and people always come harder for, they attack Christopher Nolan harder than I feel like they attack other filmmakers when they come out with a new movie, and it's because he's at the top of the game. And when you're at the top of the game, people are looking for mistakes. They're looking for errors. And I feel like the response to this movie in 5 years is going to be totally different than it is right now. I feel like it's going to be very similar to what happened with Interstellar, where when that movie first came out, not a lot of people will remember this, the response was very mixed from audiences. People were saying that he's overhyped, that the movie's hard to hear, the sound mix is bad, that the ending was trite and overly emotional and forced. And now it's like universally regarded as not only one of Christopher Nolan's best films, but one of the best sci-fi films ever made. And people people act like they never were against the movie. Everyone just acts like, no, we always unanimously agreed that that movie's amazing, and that's not the case. And I feel like that's what's going to happen with the Odyssey, is right now everyone wants to have their moment to feel kind of unique and interesting and be like, well, I didn't actually think it was that great. And in 5 years, everyone's going to be saying that not only is this one of Nolan's 5 best films that he's ever made, but it's probably one of the best sword and sandal epics ever made, ever put to screen. And I'm just going to cut through the noise and just say it right now. It is one of the greatest epics ever put to screen. It's certainly one of, I think, Nolan's top 5 best films that he's ever made. I'm not exactly sure what I think the top 5 or top 10 are, but I think this one goes right in there. I think all of the elements here are working. All of the department heads are firing on all cylinders. The editing of this film is a masterclass. The writing is a masterclass. There's a lot being made about the writing and how it was written, and it's too modern and it's too plain and too basic. The original Homeric tongue that these poems were recited in was written to be understood by the common person and by the common man. And also the language was so different. It was 3,200 years ago. So people hear like a modern American dialect and they're like, this should be a more heightened Queen's English British dialect. Why? Why should it be that? That is every bit as arbitrary a choice as saying that every actor in the movie should be speaking in a Jamaican accent or a French accent. It doesn't make any more or less sense than having them speak in a more 20th century, 21st century pastiche, American English pastiche. An adaptation of a 32-year-old text is an adaptation of a 32-year-old text. Like, you're either going to do it in the original language or you're going to bring it into a language that the people watching it today can easily understand. And that's what he has done, and he's done that really beautifully. And I find a lot of the criticism of the film to be weirdly, like, forced, and it feels like people are reaching. You are allowed to have your own opinion, of course. Art is subjective. That's the beauty of art. You are allowed to have your own opinions. You're not, there's this saying in sociopolitical discourse that I'm quite fond of, and I do a lot of sociopolitical discourse on my other channels. And the saying goes, you are allowed to have your own, you are entitled to your own opinions. You are not entitled to your own facts. And there's a lot of that going on here where people are like, why is Tom Holland saying dad? The word dad shouldn't be in this movie. And factually, anthropologically, linguistically, that is just incorrect. There's no reason why the word dad should not be in a translation, an adaptation of the Odyssey. Formal and informal words for the title of the patriarchal parent figure have always existed in all languages. There have always been multiple words for that figure, both formal and informal. So words like father and words like dad and dada and papa have always existed. And it makes sense that in this adaptation, Christopher Nolan wants Odysseus's son to use the more familiar, emotional connotation word for father. And father's a little cold, it's a little removed, dad is a little more familiar. It's obviously an intentional choice, but it's certainly not historically inaccurate or incorrect. That's just one of those things where it's like, you can have your own opinion. You can say, I don't like the way that hits my ear, or this movie just didn't do it for me. That's fine. But you can't just make up your own facts and say the word dad isn't historically accurate or isn't linguistically accurate, because that's just incorrect. This is an adaptation. First of all, it has no duty to be linguistically accurate to the original text. And second of all, linguistically, it's 3,200 years of language removed from the original text. There's like what you want, the word father instead of dad, which is what most people want. Father is no closer to the original Homeric language than dad is. They're both just as removed. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like I'm talking more about the online response than the actual film, but that's because I'm going to talk about the actual film with Kramer, and we're going to get into all the spoilers and all the details. And I just wanted to mention that somewhere, that I feel like the online critical response from people, from audiences in general, is a little weird right now, because this is just an amazing movie. 2026 has been a great year for movies. We're eating good at the cinema right now, and this was just another example of that. I'm going to see it tomorrow night again in 70 millimeter, and I can't wait. And yeah, take it away, Kramer.
Thank you, Austin. Okay, we're talking about the Odyssey. If you saw our episode on Troy, you could probably gauge how we felt about the Odyssey. And I've got to say, this movie was absolutely amazing. This is probably one of the best theater experiences that I've ever had. And this movie was absolutely, I was in awe the whole time. So I got lucky. So I actually, we went this weekend to go see a concert in Las Vegas. And then I realized, hey, Las Vegas is one of the few places where they have a 70 millimeter IMAX screen that's actually on film. And so I looked, and there was a single seat open. There were a couple seats, but I was able to get a seat at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I went and saw this movie, and in 70 millimeter, and it was absolutely breathtaking. The movie looked so good in 70 millimeter, and I absolutely loved this film. It deserves all the hype that it's getting because it was such a great experience. Now, seeing it in seeing it in 70 millimeter was amazing. That was just something that not many people get the chance to do. And if you have the chance, I would highly recommend it. One of the reasons why 70 millimeter is so great is because it is such a high resolution. I mean, it's a film. Okay. Film is not lines of resolution. But when in comparison, 35 millimeter film is 4K, like 4K TVs, right? 70 millimeter is bigger, and it's about four times the size of that. So we're talking about 16 to 18K that the image is. So it just looks so good. That's one of the reasons why it's so cool, is because the image just looks so good. And if you see the movie, you'll understand. I mean, digital projection is great. They're continuing to make obviously really really great stuff. So if you can see it on IMAX, that's awesome. If you can just see the movie, it's great. So the resolution and seeing that was just something that was so special. But the movie itself is just so well made. Now, here's the thing. I talked to a lot of people at my work, and some of them were saying, like, well, the trailers aren't really showing a lot. And it's true, but the trailers weren't showing a lot, and some of that is on purpose. But also, this is not a movie like Wrath of the Titan, or Clash of the Titans, or anything like that, where they like take the old stories and they like really make them big, and like they really like go for it, and they make the monsters huge, and like it's all very very much like cinematic. This movie felt very old school in a very good way. I mean, the Odyssey is one of the oldest stories that we know of, right? Like it's a big story that everyone would tell, and it's survived for so long. This felt very much like an old type of story, but it really is the hero's journey, right? Like this is the epitome of that story. And it's also very Christopher Nolan like, and he's making something where there are giants, and there's a cyclops, and there's these giants and all these like fantastical things, but it still feels real. Like it feels way more grounded in a sort of reality. And obviously it's not, because there are things that are happened that couldn't happen, but it feels so much like the Christopher Nolan aesthetic. So if you don't like that, that's okay. I mean, if you're not going to like it, you don't need to see it. But this movie was really, really great. And it's a very simple story in the end. Like, and it's a very emotional story. Christopher Nolan gets a lot of flack for not having a lot of emotion. This one it was very emotional. I cried a few times. I thought the basic storyline was very well done, very well written. Everything was there. Now, here's a couple things. My biggest critique of the film: people critique Christopher Nolan a lot for his audio, not being able to hear the dialogue. And that's definitely here in this one. There are sometimes it's on purpose, but sometimes it's hard to hear. So just know that. And I get it. Yes, I agree with it. I think he could do a better job of having the dialogue stand out. But it wasn't ever a huge issue, at least not for me. Um, so that's there. Just know if that bugs you, just be aware of it. It might help you enjoy the movie more if you just accept it, right? The other thing is that a lot of people are talking about the dialogue being spoken in American accents. This did not bother me. At the beginning, it's a little bit like, okay, I got to kind of get adjusted to it. But as me and Austin are going to talk about, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. Just having it be in a British accent doesn't make it more authentic. I mean, this movie would have to be in ancient Greek to be actually authentic. So the fact that Christopher Nolan updated it to American English, it didn't bother me. And the actors are so good that they pull it off. Like I totally forgot about it by the end of the movie. Like it did not bother me. Hopefully that doesn't bother you, but just know that it's going to be there. Um, but really, honestly, go see this movie. This movie is amazing. It was such a great experience for me, and I hope that you have a good experience with it too. It really does take you on a journey, and it was well worth it for me. I absolutely loved it. I I can't say enough good things about this. Honestly, see this in the theater. This is an event. This is one of those movies that comes along, every few years that is huge, and it justifies why it's so big. So obviously I loved it. I'm excited to talk to Austin about it more in depth because there's a lot here that we can go into. But let us know what you thought. Did you like the Odyssey? Were you able to see it in 70 millimeter, or did you just see it at the movie theater? What are your thoughts? What bugged you? What didn't? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let us know in the comments, and we will see you on the next one.